Today on NewsWatch, moving in on Syria, why U.S. leaders say Russia could be taking advantage of the war-torn nation. Plus, we are just days away from another blood moon. We'll break down why some believe this is a signal that God is about to move.
I just set my computer over there and I have a couple programs running, and one of them in particular is listening for things like usernames and passwords.
It's happening all over the place.
If you surf the web on public Wi-Fi, chances are there's a hacker nearby. Find out how to protect your privacy. Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Charlene Aaron. Russia is on the move in Syria. In recent weeks, Moscow has moved significant military assets to the war-torn nation. Russia says it wants to help Syria fight Islamic terrorists. But as George Thomas reports, the United States believes Moscow has ulterior motives.
Ruslan Lviv says he knew something was brewing in Syria when families of Russian soldiers started contacting him in early August.
That's when we first started getting messages that our Russian military contractors are being sent to Syria.
Lviv is a Russian political activist and blogger. He says Russia has moved a small but significant military force into Syria in recent weeks.
After our first investigation, we published the number of military equipment we thought was there. Based on the images of soldiers being brought to Syria on military ships, we thought there was no less than 1,000 of them.
According to the New York Times, satellite images from the Syrian port city of Latakia show Russia has also moved about a dozen T-90 tanks, 15 howitzers, 35 armored personnel carriers, 200 Marines, and housing for as many as 1,500 personnel.
All this shows is that Russia has made a qualitative shift in its behavior.
Moscow has denied that it is building up its military presence, saying that it instead wants to help Syria's president Bashar al-Assad fight the Islamic State terror group.
I would like to say that we are supporting the government of Syria in the fight against a terrorist aggression and are offering and will continue to offer it necessary military technical assistance.
And Assad needs the help. He's been losing territory to ISIS a lot faster this year than when the war started 4 years ago. Troop morale is also down significantly. But Pentagon officials say Moscow's sudden military moves into Syria isn't just about fighting ISIS. They believe Russia is ultimately trying to protect Assad, a longtime Russian ally. And Putin agrees. He told CBS's 60 Minutes that Assad must remain in power to avoid another Libya. However, the U.S. has repeatedly called for the Syrian dictator to step down. And the Secretary of Defense says Russia's moves to defend Assad will only encourage the radical Islamic views of ISIS.
To pursue the defeat of ISIL without, at the same time, pursuing a political transition is to fuel the very kind of extremism that underlies ISIL. And if that's the Russian view, that's a logical contradiction.
Russia's intervention has forced a meeting between Putin and Obama in New York next week. The two haven't met in 15 months, and the U.S. wants to know what Russia's long-term military intentions are in Syria. George Thomas, CBN News.
The Pope is in New York today to address the United Nations, but many are still talking about his historic address to Congress on Thursday. Abigail Robertson has more on this story.
By the massive crowds he draws, it seems Pope Francis might just be the most loved man in America. Today, his busy New York schedule begins with a speech to the United Nations General Assembly. Then he visits the 9/11 Memorial and tours Central Park, welcomed by some 80,000 lucky ticket holders, then finishes with Mass at Madison Square Garden. This follows the Pope's historic day in Washington, where his address to Congress still has both sides of the aisle singing his praises.
Whatever your political stripe, whatever part of your country you're from, he spoke to all of us.
Congress, maybe America, took a breath for a moment, a pause, and reflected on something deeply beautiful. I was proud to be there.
The Pope addressed one of his largest crowds on Capitol Hill, where more than 50,000 people watched him speak on jumbotrons, the first time a Pope ever addressed Congress. Afterward, he waved to the crowd from the speaker's balcony and spoke inspiring words in his native Spanish tongue.
People love him. People follow him, and there is a great impact in the people when he speaks to them.
During his address, the pontiff urged lawmakers to protect every human life and unite in hope and healing for a world racked by unrest.
Our efforts must aim at restoring hope, righting wrongs, maintaining commitments, and thus promoting the well-being of individuals amongst peoples.
Pope Francis continues to get political in his speeches, discussing issues like the refugee crisis, climate control, and abortion. Regarding the refugees, Pope Francis encouraged people to remember the Golden Rule and that it's our responsibility to protect and defend human life at every stage of development. One lawmaker expressed disappointment that there was no mention of the gospel.
What I think I was very surprised about was that as a leader of the church, there was no mention of the gospel. Very much a missed opportunity. I think the world needs to hear that, and particularly from their spiritual leader.
Nagma Abedini, wife of Pastor Saeed held prisoner in Iran, says she hopes the Pope speaks more forcefully about religious freedom at the United Nations, a topic she feels he ignored in Washington.
I was expecting more about religious freedom. I really pray that, for the Pope, that he would, God would really direct his path and what he is to say. But I really hope this issue of Christian persecution, religious freedom is addressed.
The Pope will end his 6-day apostolic journey in Philadelphia this weekend, where he will attend the World Meeting of Families. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
And you can see more coverage of the Pope's historic visit, including analysis and reaction from religious and political leaders. Find it all at cbnnews.com. Well, the Pope did offer one indicator this week that he supports the battle over religious liberty here in the U.S. He made an unscheduled visit to the Little Sisters of the Poor. That's a group of nuns who are fighting a legal battle for their religious freedom against the Obama administration. They're in court because Obamacare forces them to provide contraception coverage, even though it violates their beliefs. A Vatican spokesman told reporters that the Pope's visit was a sign of support for their rights. And Senate Democrats have filibustered a bill that would have stripped Planned Parenthood of taxpayer funding. The move has gained strength after videos showed Planned Parenthood making money by harvesting aborted baby organs. Top Senate Republican Mitch McConnell is trying to avoid a government shutdown next week over this issue. And so is House Speaker John Boehner. The Hill reports House Republicans have a plan to fund the government temporarily. Then they will try to defund the abortion giant during the budget negotiation process when the House and Senate combine their separate bills. Well, the King of Saudi Arabia is promising a speedy investigation to figure out what led to a deadly stampede during the annual Hajj pilgrimage. At least 700 people were killed and 800 others were hurt during the incident. Witnesses say the stampede began when pilgrims met at an intersection in the Valley of Mina, a site that all pilgrims have to file through in a single day.
I saw people falling on the ground, other people trampling them. People were trampled and the situation was out of control.
The Saudi Interior Ministry said high temperatures and the fatigue of the pilgrims might have also been factors in Thursday's disaster. New York public schools were closed Thursday in honor of the Muslim holiday Eid al-Adha. It was the first time the nation's largest school district closed for a Muslim holiday. Mayor Bill de Blasio announced this year that the city's public schools would observe the Muslim holidays of Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. Vermont, Massachusetts, and New Jersey also closed their public school districts in recognition of Muslim holidays. Well, the father and brother of the director of the Christian movie Little Boy have been found dead in Mexico. Alejandro Monteverde, who is married to actress and former Miss USA Ali Alandre, has not spoken publicly yet about the tragedy. The men were reported missing on September 4th. They were held hostage for 16 days and then killed despite the family paying a ransom for their release. Please keep the Monteverde family in your prayers during this very difficult time. Coming up, the last blood moon. What do these rare signs in the heavens mean for Israel and the world? Israel will pay for damages to a Catholic church on the Sea of Galilee after an arson attack in June. Israel's Attorney General overruled the tax authority, which had decided not to compensate the church. 2 Jewish youths were indicted this summer for the attack on the Church of the Multiplication of the Loaves and Fishes. Much of the building was gutted and parts of the roof destroyed. The vandals had also sprayed a graffiti message saying idol worship will be destroyed. The Iran nuclear deal, an Israeli war with Hamas, and the rise of ISIS. All of these world-altering events have taken place since Passover 2014, when the first in a series of 4 blood moons appeared in the sky. We're now approaching the last of these blood moons, and as Eric Stakelbeck reports, some believe it could be a signal that God is getting ready to move on the world stage.
It's called a tetrad. 4 total lunar eclipses appearing in close succession just a few months apart and turning the moon into an eerie blood-red color. These tetrads have been a rare occurrence throughout history, yet we are now in the midst of one. It began in April 2014 on the Jewish holiday of Passover, when the first blood moon appeared. Soon we'll see the final blood moon on September 28th during the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles. The final blood moon comes as a nuclear deal with the Iranian regime is being finalized, a deal that could lead to a Middle East war.
The day America turns its back on Israel will be the day God turns his back on America. And the day we validate this Iran nuclear deal as signed, sealed, and delivered will be the day we stick our finger in the eye of God.
Pastor John Hagee is author of the best-selling book 4 Blood Moons and appears in a recent film of the same name. Hagee believes the current tetrad of blood moons is a sign from God to the world that something major is about to happen involving Israel, with Iran's drive towards a nuclear weapon being a possible trigger.
President Obama says this Iran deal is going to prevent war. Seems like it may be doing the opposite. Do you think we're heading towards another big Middle East war potentially?
What the United States of America has done in the Iran agreement is to guarantee war. Iran has been saying for years, we're going to wipe Israel off the map. They had the will to do it. Now that the Obama administration has paved the way for them to get a nuclear weapon, they've given Iran the power to do it.
Hagee notes that the 3 previous tetrads of blood moons, all falling on Jewish feast days, have coincided with major events for Israel and the Jewish people. In 1492, the Jews were expelled from Spain, and Columbus discovered America, which would become a safe haven for the Jewish people. In 1948, Israel was reborn as a nation, and in 1967, Israel recaptured Jerusalem during the Six-Day War. Blood moons are mentioned in Scripture, including in the book of Joel, the book of Revelation, and the book of Acts.
The prophet Joel writes the words, "And I, the Lord, will cause the sun not to give its light," that's a solar eclipse, "and the moon shall turn to blood before the great and notable day of the Lord." Genesis 1:14 said God is using the sun, moon, and stars to send signals to mankind. God used the stars to cause the Magi to find Jesus Christ. Joshua, when they were in the battle of the 5 kings, commanded the sun and the moon to stand still for almost a day.
Hagee believes the current tetrad of blood moons, coming during Jewish feast while Israel's enemies are on the march, is no coincidence.
The evidence is very clear scripturally that God controls the sun, the moon, and the stars, that God is sending us a signal through the sun, the moon, and the stars. The question is, are we listening?
From Cornerstone Church in San Antonio, Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News.
Up next, Hack Attack. Find out where your digital secrets are most at risk and what you need to do to protect yourself. It is the first thing many people look for when they go into a coffee shop, a restaurant, or hotel: free Wi-Fi. Some cities, like New York City, are even looking to offer free Wi-Fi everywhere. But as Caitlin Burke reports, that could make it even easier for hackers to steal your personal information.
Think of the last time you surfed the web on public Wi-Fi while enjoying a cappuccino, eating a meal, or waiting for a plane. Now think of the information you entered, your password, credit card, maybe even your social security number.
Anytime you're using public Wi-Fi, chances are there's a hacker nearby with their own laptop trying to steal your information.
Anything that is programmable is hackable. Now, that being said, we live in a world where you can't just say, I'm going to forget the digital age, right? Just like you can't prevent crime, but what you can do is not make yourself a target.
Brian Krallis is vice president of SurMD, a company specializing in cybersecurity. He warns that if someone wants to steal your information, it's not hard to do.
You could literally take anybody who understands even a little bit about computers, and if they were to do a search on the internet, within 10 minutes, they could have an exact list, step by step, of how to hack a public Wi-Fi.
Armed with that information, we decided to see for ourselves by asking an ethical hacker to snoop on my computer in a coffee shop. I entered a fake username and password into a bank website, and within seconds, he had my information. My hacker, 22-year-old college student Dallas Crilly.
So basically, I just set my computer over there, and I have a couple programs running that are essentially listening to everything that's going on the network. And one of them in particular is listening for things like usernames and passwords.
At age 12, Crilly's desire to beat a computer game led to an interest in hacking.
There was a game called Neopets, and I'm the type of person that wants to be the best at everything, and so I figure out the way to win at Neopets optimally would be to create programs that played the game for me. And so I started going on forums and talking to people who had no idea that I was 12, learning the tricks of the trade, and eventually I was making money in my sleep on Neopets writing these programs. And from there, some of these same people that I met online were hackers, and I started learning more and more about that.
He jokes that he uses his powers for good. At 14, he helped small businesses protect themselves from hackers, and now designing secure business websites.
The assumption that you're going to be safe is the biggest security hole in any network or any institution.
The most common stolen information: credit cards, usernames, passwords, and sensitive emails.
It can happen anywhere, and it doesn't take somebody sinister or somebody who looks like maybe they're a terrorist from another country hacking into your system. It's happening all over the place.
Something else to be aware of, the growing number of fake public Wi-Fi networks set up by hackers.
Cell phones can be many what we call Wi-Fi hotspots. And so somebody could be sitting here, they could be sitting in a Starbucks, wherever, and they could set up their network, but they can name it whatever they want. So if you're sitting in a Starbucks, they can name it Starbucks. If you're sitting here in Cachets, they can name it Cachets Wi-Fi. So now you're logging on to actually their Wi-Fi. And now, once again, they're tracking everything that you do.
Experts like Krallis and Crilly stress that the best way to keep your information safe is to assume that it's always at risk. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Dallas, Texas.
Well, the weekend is here, and if you're looking for some family-friendly entertainment, we've got some options to tell you about. And for more, Ephraim Graham spoke with Bob Waliszewski from Plugged In Online. Check it out.
Bob, let's start with the new Robert De Niro Anne Hathaway film, The Intern. How was it?
You know, it has a very good heart. I like to call this a father-daughter bonding story, although De Niro and Anne Hathaway's character aren't father and daughter in this movie, but it's almost like they are. Essentially, he's an elderly man who's lived his career, just lost his wife. He says he has a hole in his heart, decides to sign up to be a paid intern for this internet company run by Hathaway. She doesn't really want an intern. She's just doing it because a coworker kind of twisted her arm and said, it looks good if you'll do it. Well, of course, by the end of the film, the relationship is changed, and it's that father-daughter. And she's got some marriage issues, and she's really using him to bounce off some ideas. And it's really sweet, and it's really tender. Now, we gave it a 3. So why did we knock it down a couple points? But I'm thinking more of a date night film possibility is some sensuality. Now, the biggest and most egregious scene really isn't sensual, as we find out in essence. It just looks like it is, but there's really something else going on that's clean. It just has a different feel. It's played for laughs. Ha, ha, ha. Isn't that funny? And just a teensy bit of harsh language. So, not a perfect film, a good-hearted film, a 3 out of 5 for family friendliness.
Okay, not bad. There is a new animation sequel called Hotel Transylvania 2. Is that one good for kids?
You know, with the first Hotel Transylvania, like Pixar's Monsters, Inc., we learned that Frankenstein and Dracula, they're not bad guys. They're good guys. They've just been misunderstood. Well, that was the premise of the first film. Now in Transylvania, this hotel actually plays to humans. They show up at the hotel. But this time around, Mavis, who's a vampire, and her human hubby, Jonathan, have a child. And Grandpa, who's Dracula, sure hopes this child is a vampire too and grows out his fangs. And he's going to do everything he can to help that happen, as well as keep him in Hotel Transylvania, because Mavis looks like she would like to move the boy to the human world. We gave this one a 4, which is a great score. Now, some families, of course, are going to be uncomfortable with the creepiness of it. Of course, it's lighthearted, but still, I get it. Some families, don't give me Frankenstein and Dracula, not with my kids. I totally get that. For those families who want to wade into that, a 4, it's basically a little bit of potty humor, which we're pretty much used to with animated films these days. It's not bad. And really, even with the issues that are in this film, I think parents can navigate it with their children. Might use it as a teaching moment, in fact, if they go see Hotel Transylvania 2.
Now, real quick, we've got 3 faith-based films in theaters right now. That's got to be a first, isn't it?
I've never seen that in my 24-year history of Focus on the Family, but we have War Room, we have 90 Minutes in Heaven, and we have Captive, all in the top 13 most popular films in America. And October 16th, we're going to have a 4th, which is Woodlawn. So if those 3 manage to stay in the theater till October 16th, we're going to really have a first, which will be 4 faith-based films all at the same time in the theater.
That is good news. Thank you, Bob.
You betcha. Talk next week.
Well, that's it for now on CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues that you care most about at cbnnews.com. And tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do it on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and God bless.